Happy Thanksgiving to all my American viewers. Greetings everyone, I'm IrisV, and this is for now the last episode of this series for NGS. I will be starting a more technical guide series after this one, diving into equipment design, class design, level design, and even system design, so stay tuned. These videos should allow for more neutral statements, though if I find something that I particularly don't like or I think is done poorly, I will point this out regardless, as my goal is to review the game fairly and not give more to Sega than I already have. Otherwise, let's start this episode. I will today be talking about the theory I came to when objectively looking at the state of NGS and the amount of content we were given. I, and a few others, have come to the conclusion that the game wasn't actually in a state that the developers wanted it to ship in, but in my case, I will take it one step further and say everything up to the release of Luster was intended release. This theory is a huge statement and claim to make, but I will drop my evidence down for this in this video, so let's get to it. 1. Retum has been in the game since launch. If you recall, before launch we had an open beta. In that beta, we could go up to Mount Magnus and peer into Retum, although there was a fog over it. Now, we don't know how complete it was, but we do know based on the view that it was at least there in essence. The view has never been a skybox, and this may apply in a large degree to the volcano and ice zones too. However, we cannot see enough of them to make a judgment. Retum also has the map to refer to, which means that the map itself for Retum must have been complete for a majority of the time period. This will be debunked if the map layout changes going into Retum. However, the game's file size also suggests that Retum has existed in the game for a lot longer than you'd think. NGS is not a small game. Additionally, there have been aspects of people going into Retum via glitching through the barrier. 2. In the base game story we developed the Luster class, and are canonically the Luster. So, feasibly, it would make more sense to drop Luster as part of the start of NGS. Actually, this would reverse a bit of a continuity error with the way NGS did drop, as the player character should be able to use the gunblade like second nature, but right now has no option to actually use it. Plus, we started with our class weapon. It would make more sense for us to have started as a Luster canonically and deviate from there. This makes me hope there will be a plot line about it before Luster drops, because it will be a kind of plot hole if it isn't resolved. Not to mention, it's likely our classes are going to feel more complete after Retum drops in general. This would support my theory, but we won't know until Retum. There is also the matter of level cap. From my research, when the base game launched, the level cap was level 40, though finding proof of this was very difficult. NGS started at level 20, nearly half of that, so considering the open beta for base put the player at level 30, 35 instead being the starting point for NGS would have just made more sense. You could also make the argument that Sega thinking 20 levels would be enough to satisfy the player base for 6 months is kind of insulting, and I'd agree, but my goal isn't really to talk about this right now. If you are interested in hearing me talk about this, then please let me know. Additionally, to this point, base game had 7-star weapons at some point before 6 months in. I do not know if they were at launch or not, but they were in fairly early in the game regardless. This next point loosely supports the theory but is important to establish. NGS has had delays of content that came before Retum. What do I mean specifically by this? Well, small bits of content have potentially delayed large content. There are bits of content that should have been dropped at launch as stated by the devs, but had to be pushed back due to issues with them. On top of this, Mag devices and the title system had to be delayed. Additionally, I know we did hear about there being issues before the launch of NGS as well, with systems breaking. I don't really know the specifics about what we heard. All I know is that problems were occurring even before launch, and too many little things could have delayed Retum and Luster too much for it to drop alongside everything else. This point is pure speculation, however. However, it does make sense within the bounds of the theory. This is based on content release cycle for the game, assuming that NGS is going at the same rate as base game in terms of content drops. Pso2 Episode 1 lasted for a year and had 10 chapters, starting with the launch of the game and ended with the start of Episode 2. NGS currently has a tenth of the content that Episode 1 has, and it has been half a year, so it should have 5 times that amount of content instead. So, from my perspective, the dev team simply has messed up somewhere for some reason and was unable to push the game forward. And before I get someone saying that the release of other episodes other than 1 was slower, I did the math. Our content loop is too slow regardless of what episode you use as a measuring stick. Although it should be noted that if you use episode 6 as a measuring stick, it seemingly comes a lot closer. But we do not know exactly when episode 6 technically ended. There are several minor things that could suggest that my theory is correct as well, but they could also be due to other reasons. But I think that the theory also explains a lot of these points logically as well. Very few urgent quests, lacking weapon design, endgame being the endless grind to endgame, and probably more aspects I haven't linked to it yet. I have probably missed things, I usually do. I hope you have enjoyed the final episode of my series. As I said, I will be starting a new breakdown series starting tomorrow. The pilot episode should be dropped. Remember to like and subscribe. I have been RSV, and I am signing off.